Hey guys, it's Max. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Dave Dugdale. He's a YouTuber that's been on YouTube for a very long time. I've been following him for about 3 years now, maybe. I've learned a lot from you, Dave. So
Well,
thank you for
thanks.
that.
I've learned a lot from you too. I love watching your stuff. That one video you just did recently, actually, with the other guy on the bridge with
Yes,
the 7200s or the I can't remember
the
this the
A99.
8099. Yeah, that looks like a pretty cool camera.
Yeah, it was an interesting experience because typically I get a camera in, I like to play around with it, get to know it a little bit better, go out, test myself before I do any shooting or any reviews. And I played with it for a little bit in Austin, Texas, but then just showing up and we had maybe about a half a day, maybe a little bit longer, to go find locations, navigate Portland, which is all snowed and shut down, and try to shoot myself, hoping the camera's on and the audio's recording, which a few times it wasn't working properly and the focus is on, and try to test it and present and do everything
It's
all at
not, yeah,
once.
it's not easy because as your day was going, probably the sun was going down, and I think people when they see those type of videos, like, oh, it's a half hour long, he did it in a half hour. No, it doesn't work that way. It's like a whole day, and then you come back, and then you guys are sitting in a, I don't even know where you're sitting, a bar or someplace, and you guys were talking, and that takes a lot of time too, just to set that up.
Yeah, and it was interesting. By the end of the day, I was really tired, and I'm like, wow, this is gonna be terrible. Honestly, sometimes I like underestimate what I'm doing, and then once I went through and got everything edited, and I'm like, wow, this is actually not too bad. I mean, there's definitely a lot of areas I wish I did something different, and I'll improve if I keep doing stuff like that. But I think it has a lot of people really liked it and enjoyed it, so I
Yeah,
guess
it was
it's a good
great.
thing.
And you guys, you watch other people like the Camera Star with Jordan and Chris, and they have a two-person team, which is great. Whereas like my channel and your channel, we're just kind of setting up a tripod and talking to the camera. It's not as easy as well, I'm not saying what they do over Camera Star is easy, but when you have a second person filming, it makes things go a lot faster.
Yeah, and I've spent a little bit of time with them, and they're extremely good at what they do.
Yeah, they are.
Just watching, I don't know if it's both talent and skill over time, but they're great.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, yeah. They're doing a great
So,
job.
how long have you been on YouTube for? Like, how long have you been creating content, putting it up?
I've been on YouTube for I think ever since it started, 2006, maybe around that time. And I was just putting up some random content back then. But then when I got a Canon T2i back in 2010, there was a big learning curve basically, and I was like, man, this thing is really difficult. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna like run some tests, put them up online, and if anybody enjoys it, that's great. If they don't, then no big deal. And people were like, this is great. Keep doing another test. Like, back in the Canon days, is like auto lighting optimizer, turn it on or turn it off, and here's what it looks like on, and here's what it looks off, and which one should I choose? And a lot of great feedback, and it's a very YouTube and Vimeo has been a very good community because you can learn a lot from people's thumbs up and their thumbs down and their comments. Whereas Vimeo, I don't know what's going on with Vimeo lately, but the amount of viewership, it seems to be declining, and you don't have that thumbs down. You would think, a lot of people think, oh, I don't want to see thumbs down, but that was actually teach you a lot about your videos. Like I released one recently, I think I made a mistake. Well, it wasn't a mistake. I used like a 25-year-old 85 mil lens for an autofocus test, and everybody's like, thumbs down. That was, now we're like, all right, I probably used not the best lens. It should have been an STM lens for the dual pixel autofocus, but that's how you learn. And so I got started back in 2010 and just making, random videos here and there. And I really never had like a mission statement or a game plan of how I'm putting videos out. It's more like, whatever I'm working on, I'll share, where I know some people like, I gotta, release a video every Thursday or whatever. And I've never done that. So it's always like, what am I working on? And do I want to share? And I usually throw something up.
So you kind of got into it almost by accident. Like you never thought, hey, I'm gonna start making YouTube videos. You just kind of
Yeah.
put something
Yeah.
up and
Well, I knew there was a lot of power going on there with video, because every time I was on the web, back then, 7 years ago, I was like always searching for videos, it seemed like. And I was looking at videos and seeing how people were producing them. I was like, it's a very powerful tool. And so I thought, maybe I should, invest some time into it. And, just putting those tests up online, I didn't know I really wanted to head that direction because back then I had a few real estate websites that did extremely well. I made a ton of money from them. And since then I've sold them. And it's kind of put me in the position that I'm in now, or at least back in 2010, where I could spend so much time on creating videos, not really getting that much money back from it. But now I'm got to the point where, I sell courses and I sell banner advertising on my site, and I make money from YouTube, and I make money in a lot of different ways from affiliate sales and a lot of different things. So I'm very diversified now. But back then, most people can't put that kind of time in, and, unless they've got money on the side or something. So that's kind of how I got to be where I was in 2010, is just creating content or whatever I wanted to do. And it's kind of still the same way today. I'm like very haphazard. It's like, what am I testing? I'll just go ahead and share it. Because really what happened when I was building some of my rental real estate websites back in 2008 or so, there was a lot of people that helped me, especially when it came to like cold fusion and MySQL databases and like inner joins and really complex, how you're accessing database tables. And I would just go to the forums and ask questions, and the people would answer them like quickly, and like, wow, thank you. That just saved me so much time. So when I started this site, I was like, maybe I can give back in a different way. Maybe I can show people my test, and maybe that'll help other people. And that's kind of where the whole, I guess, my channel has come to be, is just me giving back, and I guess in a very random way at this point.
Well, it works and people love it. I mean, I think one thing that I see is the way you approach your videos. It's not from like, I'm the teacher and I'm so knowledgeable and, you're a noob, so just listen to me. You have like, I don't know if you did it on purpose or it's just your personality, but you kind of have this approach that so much people really like and they connect to and they enjoy.
Yeah, I did do it on purpose in a way, because in my other other industry I was in, where I was dealing with property managers and a lot of other people, and I got it, and I hopefully there's no property managers listening, but those type of people weren't the most friendly people. And that industry was, I go to trade shows and stuff like that, and people were very, I don't know, almost nasty. And now you come into the camera industry, everybody's so nice and they're so open and they're so sharing. So when I was doing the real estate stuff, I almost felt like I was getting into this kind of nasty, especially with my competitors. I was blogging and I was blogging against them, and they were going back and forth. And funny, they actually, one guy, they tried to sue me, and years later, we kind of laughed about it, and I go out to lunch with them now and then and talk about some of that stuff. And they were like, we weren't gonna really sue you. We just wanted to slow you down because we knew you guys were making a lot of progress on your website. But in this industry, everybody's so nice. It's so easy to share. And one of the things I watch when I watch a lot of YouTube channels is, you don't want that person that comes off like being the expert and all of a sudden he's giving you bad information. So when I started, I was like, all right, I'm going to be extremely humble, just, I'm not a top DP, I'm not like a Roger Deakins. I don't know everything. I'll never know everything. So that's why I try to stay pretty humble.
And we do make mistakes. I know I make a lot of mistakes too. And then I learn from making the YouTube videos and from more experience. And it's nice to not just think of yourself as a super pro, because when you make those mistakes, obviously you're not, you don't always know what you're doing. Sometimes it's on accident. Sometimes you just didn't know it. And
you'll know instantly too. Like you put up a video and like with 10 minutes, you're like, damn. And like, it's not like Vimeo where you can say, oh, I'll replace file. You can't do that. You'll put up an annotation or whatever. And it's like, I screwed that up.
Yeah, I wish.
Like,
well. Sometimes I'll have something like a spelling mistake. Or something like that. And it's like, do I just leave it there because know people are already watching it and I don't want to just delete it and do re-uploads and stuff like that. So did you get into filmmaking before you started your YouTube channel, or did you do photography and stuff like that before, like this DSLR video revolution?
Oh, the reason I got the Canon T2i was I was trying for my real estate website. I was trying to generate some links, and by doing so, it helps my site rank higher. And if my site ranks higher, I make more money. So back then, I was going to a lot of SEO conferences and a lot of different things, and I was creating, trying to create viral videos. And back then, I don't know, viral videos were easier to do than they are now because I don't know, it just seems like there wasn't as much content as there is now to compete with. So I was doing this one. I was trying to spoof an Apple commercial with the seamless white background, and well, actually, it wasn't a seamless white background. It was kind of an interview shot where this guy was in focus and everything behind was blurry. And I was like, "How do you do that? I've got a camcorder, an old, small chip camcorder,
But you see everything."
Yeah, and I was like, "How do you get that, blurry background?" And they're like, "Oh, they shallow depth of field. The new Canon 5D Mark II just came out. You need to get one." I'm like, good God, it's like $3,000. And like, I'll wait. And then sure enough, the T2i came out, and I don't know, it was like $800. And I was like, all right, I'll pick one up. And then when I started using it, I was like, damn, this is for video. This is not easy. There's like this white balance stuff I have to deal with. There's this, what's shutter speed? Where's the word exposure? It doesn't say exposure anywhere. Like on my camcorder, there was a word exposure. I just go up or I go down. And I'm like, what's ISO? I don't know what these things are. So it was just a lot of trial and error back 7 years ago, and I quickly came around to, I've gotten to the point now, I think, where I think I know what I'm doing. But again, if you were to compare me to like a Roger Deakins or somebody like that, that's done like Shawshank Redemption or what Skyfall movie, and you watch those movies, you're like, I know nothing. And right now I'm doing a lot of different things with color. I don't know which shot you're looking at right now, but you can see I've got a lot of different colored LEDs in the background that I'm playing around with right now. I'm trying to not master color, but just understand color better, especially since I've gone from the Canon cameras, which had amazingly great skin tones, to the Sony cameras, which don't as much. They're not as good. So I'm trying to transform my Sony cameras to have the Canon colors in them. And the more I have learned about color, the more I realize I know nothing about color. It's really complex. The more you get into it, you're like, wow, this is a very complicated science.
Yeah, and I've seen some of the stuff that you've shown on your YouTube channel as far as matching the colors, and to me, it looks really good. At least the point you've got to now. You do some of the before and afters, and you go back from the standard, and with the adjustments that you've made, and it looks great.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm getting closer, but it's one of those things where I'd like to produce either a course or LUTs or something out of it. Mostly a course, because matching cameras, I think there's a lot of different ways you can do it, and if I could show people how to do it rather than giving them LUTs, I think that'd be more beneficial. But the thing that I'm finding is, if you shoot like today's a cloudy day, it looks like it's almost going to snow. You shoot in that kind of environment, and then you match up the two cameras and you create a LUT, and then you're out the next day and it's sunny, Colorado. You apply that same LUT, it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. There's contrast. There's a lot of different things going on, especially with the Canon. The Canon, one of the things I've learned is, like, in the person's skin, with the Sony, maybe is more accurate in a way in terms of how the contrast works. But the Canon cameras, actually, the way the curve is, that after I'm done taking the Sony contrast and making it into more of a Canon contrast, is like the parts of your skin actually become less, I guess, blemished. They've done it in such a way where it actually after you've done and you've matched the two cameras and you turn it on and off, you're like, damn, the Sony before, I could see so much blemishes in my face. And all I'm doing, I'm not changing, I wasn't changing any colors or anything. I was just changing the contrast only. And it's like the way they're lifting the midtones and stuff like that, it just makes your skin look so much better. Just the contrast itself. I'm not even talking about the reds and the yellows and stuff like that. But I was amazed, just contrast itself, it can make a huge difference in getting better skin tones.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've read online about that. The Sony engineers, they're just super, super technical, and they adjust everything just more towards realism and the proper colors, where Canon is just looking at what looks better. And I know, let's say you go out to watch a movie, we don't really think about it, because you just say you go to the theater, you sit down, you get into the story, and you just don't focus on colors. But then if you actually think about it, like these colors on most of the films, this is not what reality looks like. It's either, pushed warmer or colder, contrast, differences, and what looks nice isn't really what's real. Right.
Yeah, and I think a really good example too is if people know what I think it's called the eye line on the vector scope. It's that line between kind of red and yellow. And I think everybody's kind of been taught, your skin tones are supposed to land right on that eye line. Well, I think if you study, like I have many like different high-end commercials, and the high-end commercials, they build a whole entire set. They have like, the best colors in the world working on it. These are like, they're producing this 30-second spot, and they're putting, they're hiring a beautiful model or actress or whatever. And then you look at where the skin tones lie for that model eye line. They're a little bit different. And I'm like, then I'm looking at the Canon cameras like, yeah, it's kind of a little bit different too. And then you look at the Sony and it's like, whoa, it's more on the eye line, where like you said before, it's like Sony's like, we're technically getting it correct, but maybe it's not the most pleasing or that type of thing. Especially when you study other people's work that have like, especially in that really high-end commercial market or commercials. Yeah.
And those projects, like you said, they have huge teams. I know, I guess I'm kind of friends with a guy who, he doesn't do those kind of jobs anymore, but he used to work for a company and they do stuff for like LinkedIn and, really big companies. And he's like, these projects are $100,000 for a 30-second, commercial that they're putting out. He's like, there's so much different people and teams. It's just incredible. You can't really get into that unless, you have a big production company. He does a lot of weddings right now, kind of what he's focusing on.
What are you shooting on these days for your weddings and the type of work that you do? Are they Sony cameras or?
This last season was 3 NX1s.
Oh, okay. Samsung.
Yeah, and I've kind of wanted to get away from them ever since they shut the market down, because I don't really want to be using gear that's not there anymore. And I'm not happy with them all the way, but I haven't been able to leave them because, I shoot everything in 4K, even if I don't deliver in 4K, just to be able to reframe my shots, punch in. But just the usability, no overheating. The LCD screen it's their Samsung AMOLED, so very, very bright and crisp, very easy to see what's in focus. They've been great in those ways, but I want IBIS, I want better low light and kind of stuff like that, but I haven't been able to switch over to Sony completely because of overheating, some ergonomic issues and stuff like that. So this year, I may, depending kind of what else comes out, I may switch completely to Sony. One of the things that's kind of a pain, because I've been using the 6300 as my gimbal camera, and then I'll have the other cameras as, on tripods, monopods, stuff like that. And we usually have 2 of us shooting, so 2 of us have cameras and then a couple other cameras just set up on tripods for other angles. But the color matching, like you said, different scenarios require different adjustments. And just having one Sony camera and trying to match it to the Samsungs, it is such a pain going through, especially when you have the shots where you have like a close-up angle of the bride and groom and then you have a wider shot or a different direction. And just the differences, it is so tough to do that. So I'm just like, I need to just switch to one brand and not do that. It just takes so much extra time, especially when, you're charging a flat rate. You're not just billing by the hour. So each hour you add into it, your profit goes down. And as a business, it's tough. So
I remember when I had a lot of my Canon glass still when I switched over to Sony, and one of the lenses I had was the Tamron 24-70 2.8, and I was really amazed. That thing was like 200, maybe 300 degrees Kelvin warmer than the Sony lenses, that I was using, and I was like, wow, just the lenses themselves can just in color can be that much different.
Yeah, I think I know you at least made one video kind of talking about that.
Yeah.
I was surprised.
And at that point I was like, all right, screw it. Especially with the autofocus issues I was having, especially in low light with the Metabones back then, a couple of years ago, I was like, all right, I just sold all my Canon glass and got all Sony.
Oh, so you're just shooting with native lenses, no adapters or anything?
Yeah. And that's why, with the A6500, which is really nice about this is it's, all the Sony lenses are focused by wire, so you can't repeat a move. It's like almost impossible. But now with the touchscreen, it's like just rack focus this way. It's like that kind of gets around that focus by wire issue, at least for me.
And the autofocus is so good that Like when I first got into weddings, we did everything manual focus because we had to, because the Canon cameras back then, I started off with Canon cameras as well, but the autofocus wouldn't work. It just, you have to manual focus everything. But now with the Samsung as well, they have really good video autofocus. Like bride walking down the aisle, you can get better results letting it do its thing instead of trying to focus yourself.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing that one video you did. I think it was your wife coming towards you in slow motion out in your backyard or something like that. And I was like, wow, that NX1 was amazing what it could do. I think I don't even remember what you compared it to, maybe a dual pixel autofocus from Canon or something, but it was amazingly good.
Yeah, so that's kind of where when I started to use video autofocus, and we still use manual probably more so, but there's certain situations where it works better. Like for example, on a slider, doing a shot where the camera is getting close to a subject. I mean, that's tough to be able to manual focus as a slider is getting closer and keep a subject in focus but putting in autofocus, I've done some of those shots where it's amazing how well it works out. So it's nice to see other people kind of come around too, because when I first started talking about autofocusing, people were just like, you're not a pro, you're a noob, you don't know what you're doing, you have to manual focus or else you're not going to be, and I'm like, I've been manual focusing for years and years now. Like there's cases where you should use this, it's better, use the right tool for your job.
Also in your situation where you're doing weddings and it's very run and gun, I mean, like, man, I'd be using that tool as much as I can, if I were to ever do weddings, which I'm not, because that just seems way too stressful to me. But
it is,
Bridezilla or whatever. But yeah, that to me, just I would be using it constantly. I would find out which camera had the best autofocus for video, which I'm trying to do right now. I'm trying to run a lot of different tests between Canon and Sony, and I don't even know what else is out there that even is up there in that level of those two cameras. But
yeah, the Sonys have been really good. When I first used it, and the Samsungs are good too, but some of the cameras, they would just randomly just focus to the background. It's kind of like the subject's right. I know the GH4 and stuff was like this. The subject's taking up most of the frame. Why in the world are you going to the background? This makes no sense. And the Sony, even in the wide autofocusing mode, which is what I use for, I use the Xi'an Crane, however you pronounce it, and I love it with my 6300. I either use the 50-1.8 or I use a 22.8, and it knows what, it almost like it can read my mind. Most of the time it's great, and to be able to shoot at f1.8 on that 50, which is like a 75 equivalent, nice autofocus backgrounds and doing some really nice camera movements and motion, it's incredible. Whereas before, like on the GH4s or 5Ds where I'd shoot on the glide cam, I'm setting it to like f5.6, trying to get everything in focus, or trying to somehow hold my distance properly, to get a nice shallow shot. It was tough.
And I think Sony is like actually improving things subtly, maybe behind the scenes. They're not actually telling us, but like my A7R II that I'm actually using right now, if I were to like rotate my chair and look the other way and I would lose my face, a lot of times it would lock onto the back wall. But I've noticed with the A6500, I haven't noticed it doing that. So maybe there's a different algorithm in the A6500. I don't know, but maybe they're improving a little bit each time, and maybe they're not actually telling us, hey, we improved the video autofocus or something.
Yeah, they definitely are. One thing I noticed with the A7S II and the A7R II, I think the A7R II was a bit better, but when you'd shoot, say, a 50-1.8 or the 55-1.8, and then or even like the 28 f2, I have some videos I shot with that. My face looked like it was in focus the whole time, but then in the background, you'd notice, the focus just...
I think that had a lot to do with, I was using the sensitivity. I think they've changed the nomenclature in the menu, but from like normal to very sensitive. If it's too sensitive, you'll get that pulsating. Also, I think if you take the track speed and you break it up too high as well, you'll get that pulsing, especially in the very corners. You'll just see it very subtly. So I've got everything pretty much on the slowest level now. So I'd rather it come a little bit slower to me than having that pulsating type stuff going in the background.
Yeah, and I didn't notice it at first until some of the viewers on YouTube.
Like,
like, wow, yeah. But it's nice to be able to have the video autofocus. It's really convenient, especially if you're shooting at f1.8, going in and out a little bit, and it can track you.
Yeah, like right now I'm shooting at I think f4.5, and yeah, it's just on autofocus, and I'm looking at myself on my monitor right here, and I haven't seen it go out of focus yet. Oh, there it goes. I know you can't see what I'm seeing, but you'll see it later.
Do you have any advice to people who want to start a YouTube channel or they're thinking about it?
That's a good question. My advice would be try lots of different things at the very beginning, see what sticks. You might have an idea of what's going to stick, but I can tell you so many times I'm like, I put something up and I was like, oh, this is going to be great. Everybody's going to love it. They're going to share it. And like, it goes nowhere.
Yeah.
And then you do something really random and like, it gets like shared all over the place. Like, what was that about? You know, that kind of thing. So I think my first advice would be definitely try lots of different things, and definitely don't go out of the realm of what you're passionate about. Stick it with, because like I was doing stuff in real estate back then. I wasn't passionate about it. I was making money. I wasn't very passionate about it, but doing the camera stuff, I'm a lot more passionate about, and it's a lot easier to create content. So if you're trying to do something that you're not passionate about, it might work for a month or two, but you'll notice over time, you'll be like, I dread it. I don't want to create another video, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah, exactly.
But if you're passionate about it, you will create video, and you're like, oh, I got so many things on my list of, videos I want to do. I can't do them all. If you have that, if you got to that point, then you're in the right niche. I would say the next thing too would be, if you don't follow me, because I'm a bad example, but the people that I follow that I notice do really well, there's two different types of things. There's the person that produces content like weekly, and though your audience gets used to that and they want it and they crave it, you'll see your subscriber rate go way up quickly if that's what you're after. And then there's other people, on the other hand, who create super duper incredibly awesome content, and they might only produce it like once a month or once every 2 months. And a great example of that is Every Frame is a Painting. Have you seen this guy, Tony? It's like, he's got 1 million subscribers, but what does he produce? What, maybe 6 videos a year?
Yeah.
Not many, but his content is so ridiculously good. You're like, oh, I'm going to watch it, And it doesn't matter. You're just going to watch it because he'll like do a breakdown of Jackie Chan or whatever. And it's just amazing. The editing style, whatever he does, fantastic. In fact, I don't think he's produced one in a couple of months. And then there's like other people like, like Casey Neistat, when he was vlogging once a day, I mean, his subscriber rate went through the roof, and he's got great editing style. He's got a great voice. So I would definitely say find your voice, find what you're passionate about. And you could try lots of different things. You don't have to stick with the vlog method every day. If you look at Tony's channel, there's a lot of different ways to go. And one of the things I wanted to kind of talk about was YouTube is changing, and I'm not exactly changing along with it myself. My subscriber growth has kind of gone down. I've got like 180,000 people that follow me, but there's other people. Like there's the one guy, his name's Ash Taylor. Have you followed Ash Taylor stuff?
Yeah, actually,
freaking amazing.
I watched it after you made a video about that.
It's so good. I'm like, that's where YouTube is heading. I think there's like really high quality content like that. And then you got people, I don't know if you've seen this guy, it's called Gear and Whiskey. I'm sure if you look on YouTube for Gear and Whiskey, he's only got 2 videos. I don't know if you've seen 1 or 2 of his videos, but they're like, wow, this is so good. That's where YouTube, for me, is heading, especially in this niche that we're in with camera reviews and stuff like that. And I need to change my direction a bit after watching that stuff. Because I think what you'll notice is maybe 7, 8 years ago, when I was on, using YouTube, I would only subscribe to maybe 10 channels. But like right now, like Max, how many channels do you subscribe to?
Probably 100.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm at 100. So what happens is people that watch my videos, for instance, back 7, 8 years ago, if I had 10,000 people following me, well, a good portion of those people would be watching my video. But now I have 180,000 people that follow me, but I might only get 10,000 people actually watching the video itself. That's because in their feed, there's so many choices for them to look. It's like, oh, he's talking about Canon autofocus. I don't care, and I'll wait until he does a video on Sony, for instance. And I probably left a lot of my viewers in the dust when I changed from Canon to Sony. They're like, and they just never hit unsubscribe, and they just don't watch. or maybe they're waiting for the day that I maybe go back to Canon or something like that, which who knows, maybe Canon will get off their butt and do something. I would love to go back to Canon because it's got, like I said, great colors.
That was something I wanted to ask you as well. Like, why did you leave Sony and would you go back? So I guess you kind of answered that already.
Yeah, I left Canon mostly because they weren't innovating. I remember one NEB, I went up to their booth and I said, "Are you going to give us focus peaking? Are you going to give us, zebras anytime soon?" And this was years ago, and they were like, "Nope, we're not giving it to you." Although I got a little M5 in.
Yeah, I have one too, laying somewhere.
And it does have peaking now, finally, but no zebras. And they're like, all right. So I guess they're listening to the market a little bit, but I've been very disappointed with Canon in terms of the way they're, I don't know, Sony's just beating them totally, because the image coming off this 6500 is just freaking amazing. My friend has a red Epic camera, and I'm like, this thing pretty much keeps up with it, not only in terms of resolution, but dynamic range. It's doing quite well. It's pretty amazing what you can do with like $1,000 camera these days. All it needs is a bit of color, and it just looks amazing.
Yeah, and especially the dynamic range too. Like I shot with GH4s. As soon as they came out, I ordered 2 of them and then got another one because I wanted to go into 4K right away. But dynamic range, I mean, it's similar to Canon, maybe just ever slightly better in one of the recent tests I did with the 5D Mark IV. But then shooting with the Sonys, it's kind of like the GH4 has the V-Log, the log profile, but you get a lot more noise, you have to spend more and more time, and my Sony A63, now 6500, is better, or at least at the level of dynamic range using a standard profile, not S-Log, compared to the V-Log on the Panasonic. And for weddings, where sometimes we have outside ceremony, there's just middle of the day, really harsh sunlight, the bride's walking from shadows into bright sunlight in a white dress. Back then, either you're crushing your shadows or everything's blown out. And now it's incredible where I'm bringing the highlights down and bringing the shadows up, and I'm like, wow, this image looks great. Like there's no way I could have done this before.
Yeah, I'm just like I said, the image off the A6500 is just really amazing when you're looking at it in detail in 4K and you compare it to the Canon like M5. The M5 looks like a bowl of mush. It's like, yes. you look at it and you're like, is it really even 1080? Is it? I think it's somewhere between 720 and 1080. I don't even think it's a true 1080 because I've looked at the C100, the C300, some of that footage, and I'm like, that looks fantastic. And now that's a 4K sensor being downsampled to 1080, but that 1080 signal looks like, the 6500 a lot closer. It's just night and day.
I was actually, so I have my M5 review coming up, and I was quite excited about it. At first, I actually was mistaken. I thought it had IBIS in it, but it's just the software stabilization. But I'm like, wow, it's peaking. They put out a few more lenses, and I was like, they're heading somewhere. I mean, this doesn't have 4K yet, but this could still be a good camera. And then and I've actually owned 4 of the M1s. I actually own an M3. It's like a family camera. We leave it at home, even though I have a bunch of cameras here. And so I was like really excited about it. And so I did some vlogging and stuff. And then with my assistant, we opened up some of the footage on a 4K screen. And we didn't stretch it out or anything. Just left, it's just 1080 taking up a quarter of the screen. And I'm like, what is this? How can I recommend? So, where do you think Canon is going? Do you think they're going to change their minds and their mindset with the video market?
I don't know. I would think that they're so into the stills market that they're going after the photographers. And I know, like my friend down the street, she bought a Canon 5D Mark IV and she shoots stills and she loves it. And that's probably what they're trying to go after. But if the hybrid shooters, because I love shooting stills myself, but I want to shoot video. I want to do it all on one camera.
Exactly.
And the 5D Mark IV, I had the 1DX Mark II and it's just crazy, these enormous file sizes with the motion JPEG. And the 4K actually looked pretty decent, but it's like the way they're doing stuff inside of it. I think for me, a mirrorless and video go together so well. Whereas you've got a mirror box or a prism or whatever on the camera. A DSLR just, to me, doesn't make any sense anymore. And I think the EVFs have gotten so good
Yeah.
over the last 3 years that, maybe some purists out there, all they want to do is look through an optical viewfinder. But for me, I'm like, I want to know when I put this up to my eye, I want to know exactly what I'm about to take a picture of. And I can change the white balance. I can change the exposure right now instead of doing this. Chimp, chimp, chimp. It's like, it's odd. I mean, even if I was a photographer, I'd go mirrorless, just for the non-chimping.
Yeah, exactly. So I spent years using cameras, so just mirrored cameras, shooting wedding photography. We shot tons of weddings. We'd go leave a wedding with 5,000 photos. Two photographers. So I knew how to use those. But then switching over to mirrorless and then getting the 5D Mark IV in, I went out to shoot some photos, and then I look, and I'm like way blowing the photos out, and or I'm just way underexposing them, and so I'm going back to looking back at the screen, and I was like, yeah, there's no way. I mean, I shot. I left wedding photography. First, I did kind of both video and photography, kind of switched a little both. Then I just decided to just go straight video, focus on one thing, get really good at it instead of trying to do two not great. And I shot one wedding using the A7R II with photos, so not video. And I was like, this is amazing. I wish I had something like this back then. Just the size, especially if you're using like the Sony smaller lenses, the primes, compared to using a 5D Mark II. We shot most of the weddings with 5D Mark II with a big, huge lens flash. But at the end of the day, my hands are like falling off, holding it all day. And this thing is tiny, and it's great to be able to see what exposure you want, your exact exposure when you're looking through. Have you seen Tony and Chelsea's kind of the videos that they've done on the history of different camera brands?
Yeah, those are kind of interesting. I think I saw one on, I don't know, maybe it was Canon or something like that. And they went back, 100 years back or something like that. And it was very interesting. I learned a lot of different things I didn't know.
I really enjoyed it. I think they did one on, it might have been Kodak or one of the older cameras that went, or one of the brands that kind of went under. And it was interesting. The main thing, they kind of pointed out what directions they were shifting and kind of what happened. And they just kind of didn't go with the times. They did, at first, like the companies, they kept going with the new technology, improving, finding out new ways to do things. But then they kind of just held back and stuck to their traditions. And then they just kind of flatlined and then just went down. So I know one really big thing with Canon is just the brand recognition and the professionals using the cameras, so that then their relatives see them using Canon, so they go out and like, hey, I want to buy a Canon camera. I think that's a huge thing that keeps pushing sales. But I've seen even wedding photographers switching over to Sony, and especially all the videographers are already switched over to Sony here locally. So I wonder how in the next 3, 4, 5 years what's going to happen, where these photographers are now using Sony, and the brand recognition is going to kind of shift as well.
I remember, I can think of a story like maybe it was back in 2010 when I had my Canon T2i, and I was walking around Pearl Street Mall, which is a place in Boulder, Colorado. And there was a woman that had a Sony camera. I was like, I'd never seen one before. And we struck up a conversation. I'm talking to her. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I've got Canon. It's the best. I'm thinking that kind of thing. And then she started describing some of the stuff. And she started talking about the IBIS that it had back then. I'm pretty sure that's what she talked about. It's like, really? I said, you're saying that the sensor itself is moving around and it's not the lens that's doing the image stabilization? She says, yeah. And I was like, wow, that's a great idea. I never even thought of that, And I was like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Canon isn't, back then I was like, what is Sony doing? Because I heard, you never hear about anybody shooting Sony back 7 years ago.
Yeah.
But now it's like, you see, I don't know if you go to NAB or not, but I guarantee you go to NAB and you look around, all the people what they're going to be using. It'll be like RX 100s. It'll be 6500s. It'll be all Sony cameras, and you won't see one Canon 5D Mark II or 3 or 4 like you did 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah, I forgot who I was talking to that was at NAB, and they kind of described when they started, it was all Canon cameras, 5D Mark IIs, 3s, and then you had a little bit of a mix. And then the last year, you almost saw nobody shooting with Canon as far as shooting video. So it's changing. So I mean, I want Canon to succeed, and I hope they kind of changed their mindset? Because there's so much people, like you said, you would switch back over to Canon if they would give better video features and better video quality, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you were to take a camera like this and you put the name Canon on it and it had the Canon colors, I'd be like, all right, I'll buy it. You know, I'll switch back.
And I think there's so much people also like in the, I'm part of different groups on Facebook for wedding videographers and other filmmakers that have switched over, but they still, if Canon came out with something, they would go back. They love the design, ergonomics, the colors is a huge thing. So I think they still have a chance, but I don't know. I want more brands to be out. I like competition. I like that it drives the market and gives you a lot of choices, and I think it's great for everybody. I don't want to just be Sony at the end and then Sony's not going to care because they're the top leader. What is your favorite thing about YouTube?
Favorite thing about YouTube? I would have to say, I mean, especially if you compare it to Vimeo, I don't know what, and this is going to sound weird, but kind of going back to the thumbs down. Thumbs down is a very, very powerful indicator. And plus all the analytics that you get, especially once you get to a certain point where the video's been watched maybe 10,000 times, you can actually go in and see analytics of where people are watching and where they drop off. Like if they only stay for the first 3 minutes and it's like it's a half-hour review of some camera or something like that. Well, what happened at that 3 minutes? Were you on camera too long? Were you not showing enough B-roll? I mean, what was the subject matter? Was it something to do with, you know, something that they don't care about? You know, those type of analytics. That's one of my favorite things about YouTube is the analytics and stuff. But, you know, besides the interaction, you know, obviously I love the back and forth because I learn so much too. Because sometimes I'll put up a question. I'm like, you know, what are you guys doing here for this? And they come back with all these great comments. So I think there's a lot of people out there, and I don't do it enough. You know, I don't do enough like things that engage my audience, like giveaways or contests. I don't do any of that type of stuff. I wish I would actually do more because I think as a viewer myself of other people's channels, when they do stuff like that, yeah, it's like I want to participate. I want to be part of the process, that kind of thing. So I think probably one of my favorite things is obviously the interaction, but I'd say like the analytics, and you learn so much like quickly, like within the first 10 minutes. If you get that video wrong and you said something wrong, you'll know it in the first 10 minutes because they will let you know.
Definitely, you'll see just a bunch of comments. Sometimes with me, it's a little frustrating. Like you'll have one person mention something, it's great. Then you have another person, and then you have like 10, 20 people. It's like, did you not see all the other people that commented this already? So that's okay though. But yeah, it's great. Like I love the interaction with the audience. Like I like going into the comments and talking to people, and it really feels like a community. Instead of just kind of like one-sided me putting up videos and kind of that's it. So what's your least favorite thing then? Now we know kind of your favorite. What do you not like about YouTube?
Not like about YouTube. I would say probably, you know, it's a little bit on the frustrating side that you build a large audience. Like I said, I have around 180,000 people that follow me, but yet my video might get watched in like an average of like maybe 10,000 times. And that, again, I think it's more of a frustration on myself rather than YouTube because I think I'm doing a few things wrong. I don't produce content on a regular basis. My content's all over the place. If it was more themed, or if I was, you know, in the beginning, it was more about my journey of getting better. And I feel like I said before, I'm no Roger Deakins, but I feel I've reached a certain plateau or so in terms of technical knowledge of operating cameras and stuff like that, which is great. But maybe some of that journey has gone away. So maybe, you know, I'd like to create a new journey or something like that of maybe I create something and I want the community of YouTube to help me out, create it. Like, you know, here's the first process. What do you guys think? I'm like, oh, you know, maybe you should go this way or put up a storyboard or something like that. And then actually shoot it and then get their feedback, maybe some more involvement that way. That's kind of what I'm thinking. I need to change a little bit because I think it's a little bit frustrating to having a large audience, but only a fraction of the people actually watch.
So I know you mentioned that you have a lot of people that you subscribe to. Have you noticed personally where you don't see a video in the subscriber feed, and then you go to somebody's channel and you notice, hey, there's a video up that didn't.
That does happen occasionally. I'm like, how did I miss that one? You know, you're like, because I usually, to be honest, I don't watch it on my computer. I usually watch it on my phone when I'm like doing other things, like if I'm I don't know, I'm out and about, or if I'm doing daddy carpool or whatever, and I'm just sitting there watching stuff. Yeah, sometimes it just won't be in the feed, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, I think I've noticed this maybe the last few months, and I've mentioned it in some of my videos for people to enable notifications, you know, if they actually want to see my content. I've noticed it personally. I've heard other people talk about it where YouTube is kind of doing something that Facebook has done, where before, say, you put out content, everybody who liked your page would see it. I think now the percentage is like 9%. So if you have 100 people who liked your page on Facebook, only 9 of them will see it even. So it's not that bad, but YouTube's doing some kind of algorithm filtering it out, where if you didn't click on a few of their videos as they were coming through, now the next one they just might not show it, because so much people, like you said, are subscribed to so many people now. There's just tons of videos that are coming through. So that's also an interesting thing for people to know.
That's kind of frustrating if they're actually changing the algorithm to do that more Facebook style. Not inclusion, but the opposite of inclusion, yeah, where they're taking stuff out.
I know I asked you a little bit about your courses. I've seen you put up different courses on different cameras. I've seen some of the preview content I've went through on your website, and it's incredible how detailed they are. Like you said, they're about 6 hours usually, right?
Yeah, the last 2 courses I did, they were 6 hours long. The Canon courses were like 4 hours long, but the Sony menus have so much more stuff in them that it takes a while, especially when you're talking about S-Log. I think like my last A7S course, I think I spent a whole hour just on S-Log, and I had a guest person come in that's a professional colorist, and he helped out on that part of the S-Log chapter as well, because it gets quite involved and complex, especially for somebody that's just starting out.
That's on the A7S too?
Yeah, the A7S II, I believe, is the one I had Matt Scott do like a 45-minute section on S-Log. And I think I did like probably a 45-minute section on S-Log as well before he even started. So the courses are kind of interesting. I do them more from a selfish standpoint, because when I buy a camera, I want to know everything about it before I use it on a regular basis. So I'll just create the course. So you won't see me make courses like on cameras that I don't own. I probably would make a lot more money if I did it that way. But they're also on the flip side, I don't do that many of them because they're kind of a creativity suck. They suck the creativity out of you, because when you get that detailed and that technology, you're getting all the nitty gritty, and you spent months on it. And after a while, you're just like, I don't want, I'm done. After I'm like, you want to finish
the camera.
Not that I want to touch it, but I want to touch the camera and do things more creatively. Whereas the courses are more technical.
So how long does it take you to make one, like for example, the A7S II course? How much time, hours-wise, goes into that?
I don't know about hours, but I would say it takes good 2.5 months sometimes to make a course that I know it's only 6 hours long. You're like, well, you just did it in 6 hours. You did it in one day. No. Because there's a lot of testing and going out and trying different things. And there's so many things to test, especially when you go through the menu. And I think there's over, I can't remember what I counted them all up. There's well over I can't remember what the number is, but it's ridiculous. If you count up every single menu item in the Sony camera, there's a lot. I can't remember, it's 100, 200 items. It's really a lot of stuff in there. So to cover each one and test each one and demonstrate each one, that takes a while.
Yeah, I think after this video, I'm going to go buy your A7S II course to learn more about the S-Log. I'd love to see a course. I think a lot of people would agree on, like you said, you're doing the Canon colors.
Yeah.
And just maybe about grading S-Log. And I know you have more experience than I do. I rarely use S-Log because of how much more time it takes. So I'll use it like in extreme situation, like at a wedding where there's lots of windows with beautiful scenery in the background. I'm trying to capture the detail inside, and out. But I'm still not very proficient at that. Like colors, like you're exploring a lot about colors. You mentioned the more you learn and the more you look into it, the more there is to learn. So I've been trying to kind of avoid that and focus on other things. But I think it'd be great, like you said about the Canon stuff, to put something out specifically on that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that have a certain amount of pain in their life that bought a Sony camera, and they're like, they just assumed that they were going to get great colors, and they're maybe a little bit disappointed in the skin color. Because I've noticed that the Sony will tend to go a little bit to the yellowish green side, especially when you put Canon and Sony right next to each other and you don't grade them, you're just looking at them, you're like, why does the Sony it just has that kind of almost green, not alien flavor to it, but it's just a little bit off. And again, it's more that where the eye line is and what's happening where the skin tones are and how it spreads along the eye line too. Whereas the Canon cameras, the amount of spread that they have in the skin is a lot narrower, and it's not really touching the eye line. So I think, I want to create LUTs. I've already created quite a few LUTs, and I keep using them myself personally, and they're working. Like I said, I want to get to the point where somebody's like, oh, I want to buy the course. I want to download the LUTs. I want to solve my pain right away. Boom, flat. And it might work for them. But what I want to do is, like, say in the beginning of the course, like, all right, if this doesn't work for you, don't get discouraged. Come back. Let me teach you a few things about applying the LUT. And because sometimes you have to pre-treat the LUT, and there's different programs like Resolve. There's, Premiere Pro. There's Final Cut. There's all these different things, and they all kind of do things a little bit differently. So I'm still, I think I'm getting close. How I'm going to present it is still a mystery to me in terms of the course.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a huge audience for that, to learn more and to figure out how to solve that. And I think that the tutorial or course with that is huge. I know you mentioned about, the colors and everything. It really matters what situation you're in. Like, a lot of people I see are buying LUTs, and then they're really frustrated afterwards because they see like this example video where you see like a before S-Log shot or something, and then all of a sudden this LUT goes on and it looks like magic. Like, wow, this looks amazing. And then you get your own shots and you throw that on and you're like, what is this? Either it's, all of a sudden it's just everything's crushed too much, or it's overexposed and the colors are off just because your exposure matters, the amount of contrast in the scene, the lighting. I mean, there's so much variables that, like, personally, I only use LUTs after the image is color corrected, it's where I want it to be, and then I'll apply a LUT, usually at only about half. Like, it's a creative LUT just to make like a more film-like appearance, and only about like half percentage, like an overlay, just to shift the colors a little bit, give it a little bit of a feel, and that's about it. Because it's tough to do.
It is tough, and like you mentioned, you have the M5, and I have the M5. I don't know if you use DaVinci Resolve, but one of the things I ran into, which I thought was very interesting, is when you bring this H.264 codec into Resolve, and you leave the clip attributes on what's called automatic. So in terms of the video levels where it resides, what happens to the signal is it actually takes the Canon signal and pulls it down in Resolve. So the blacks are crushed. So this this thing I'm wearing right here might look almost completely black or close to it because it just brings everything and crushes it down. And like you might have like recorded like a chart at 100 or IRE, and it might just go down to 90. So what you have to actually do in Resolve is take that footage and tell it to go clip attributes to full. So the Resolve does something differently, and it brings everything up. So there's not only there's the LUTs part of it, but there's also how your program interprets the actual video levels and footage. It gets, like I said, more I learn, the more I'm like, damn, this gets really complicated.
Yeah, it seems like it was nice and easy back in the Canon days where you grab your camera, you go shoot, you make sure you don't overexpose it, and it looks pretty good. Now you have way more options and way more settings, and the Sony picture profiles, it's crazy. You have your creative additions, and then you have your gammas and everything, and it's just like, it's making it harder to get your stuff done. Well, I'm excited whenever it comes time, whenever you're ready for that to come out. I think it's going to be really helpful to the filmmaking community, and just in general, a lot of work that you're doing.
Like I said, I usually do these courses mostly selfishly because I want the Canon colors myself, and I'm figuring if I do, then maybe other people want it as well. So when it comes out, it'll be very interesting to see how it's received, because like I said, everybody's had that experience where they've applied a lot and they're like, damn, this doesn't work, that kind of thing. So I'm trying very hard to normalize the curves and the colors in such a way where you can use it on an outdoor shot or an indoor shot or a 3200K shot or a 5500K shot, that kind of thing. And it always will work after you've maybe white balanced it correctly. So yeah, it's just it's taking some time. Unfortunately, it's not an easy thing to do.
But with how you do stuff, it's going to be good. You're
Oh,
not
thanks.
you don't just rush it out, like a course and get it out there, and then it just leaves people frustrated. So thank you, Dave, for joining me. It was awesome to get to talk to you, and
Yeah, it's nice to meet you.
maybe we'll do something in the future. Yeah, we've never talked.
If you go to NAB, let me know. I'll buy you a beer.
Nice. Yes, I most likely will be there. Will be a first time, but I feel like I already know you really well, even though this is the first time we've actually spoke. It's interesting just following people online, getting to know them over time. You feel like you've known each other for years, where in reality you've never even met them. So that's an interesting thing. So any last words or anything you want to mention?
No, just thanks, because I've done these type of interviews and stuff before with other people many years ago, and I know how much work it takes to like organize it, set it up, edit it, and stuff like that. So, for your audience, yes, thank you, because it does take a lot of effort for what you're doing. People don't realize, oh, he just called Dave and they're having the conversation. There's a lot more that goes into it. So, thank you.
Yeah, we'll have some editing to do and stuff like that. But it was great talking to you, and I think people are really going to enjoy getting to know a little bit of the backstory and some more thoughts other than just typical focused videos on a certain subject. So it was nice talking to you, Dave, and hopefully we'll do this again someday.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Alrighty, have a good one. Bye.
You too.